Hey everyone, welcome back to part 4 of the Batwing fairing conversion on my '04 Road King. So in the last video, buttoned everything back up, put the forks back on after I polished them, got the wheel all back into place, everything, got it sitting back down on its own wheels here, so it sports its own weight. Feel a little bit better about that. I've gone ahead and started putting the nacelle back on. That's going to be the first step, obviously, into trying to fit this fairing on the bike. The bars, I think they're in about the right spot. I have everything kind of, zip tied into place here, good enough to hold it. I've already ordered all of my cables. I ordered the new clutch cable, ordered new brake lines for the front, as well as throttle cables. I ordered everything in plus 6 inches over stock. Conversed with a friend of mine about this who's done plenty of these bikes, and we were talking about the extra length I'm going to need, when I go ahead and start extending all the wiring and the cables and all that good stuff. He says better to have a little bit too much than not enough. So I kind of mock measured it just to get a feel for what I was going to need, and started looking into these bars a little heavier. Turns out these aren't 10s. I thought they were 10s. They're actually 12s, which is okay because I'm 6'2", and when I'm sitting on the bike, it's kind of a nice level. I don't think my arms are going to be falling asleep or anything when I'm riding it. So and they should come out, I think, probably even with the top of the fairing, or maybe a little bit above. I don't know, we'll find out once we get it on there. But all right, so give me a minute, get set up here, and we'll start fitting this thing on. All right, so I went ahead and I already mounted the brackets to it. They just come with nuts and bolts. You got to split the half, split them into 2 halves and then nut and bolt it together. I think they're, for the most part, in the right spot, but we won't know until it actually falls into place. Like I said, I have the nacelle buttoned up, rather loosely, just enough to be able to slide those brackets down over there, hopefully, fingers crossed. But yeah, let's give it a whirl. So that went on a whole lot better than expected. I really thought I was going to have a huge fight with this thing. I'm just noticing it does fit a little. I mean, we're a little close. We barely got any kind of clearance between the nacelle, but on this side we got a little bit. So I'll chalk that up to just being some, discrepancies in the fiberglass. Everything seems to be pretty symmetrical. It seems to be sitting on there nice. These brackets are going to definitely need a little bit of messing with. So what I did was I went ahead. I can see that this is actually slotted a lot more than this top one is. So this one is bottoming out before this one does, obviously. I don't know if that's the way they designed that or not, but it still needs to go down a little bit further. I have a hellacious gap in between there, which is going to send nothing but cold air my way when I'm riding. So I definitely want to do away with that. I think the fix for that is going to be chiseling out this right here so that this bracket can then go down a little bit further. That'll in turn sink it right down. I loosen my bolts here and slot, set them down as far as I can on the holes. I really don't want to be, chopping out those holes in that fiberglass to be any larger than they really need to be. So I'm thinking the bracket is probably going to be my first, recourse. Cut into that a little bit and just kind of, widen it a little bit so that it can slide down a little bit further. So I've made the marks of where it sits on the rubbers. Those rubbers are shot anyways. I have new ones on order as well. But yeah, I'm gonna, just for S's and G's, I think I'm gonna put the outer part of the fairing on, bolt it up, and just see what it looks like on the bike, and then maybe start tearing it back down and maybe seeing what I can do about lengthening the slot on this upper one to match that one. So originally these lines that I put in here are just a point of reference, so I can get an idea of like actually how far up I need to go so that I can get this one to bottom out as well. So we'll kind of figure that out once we cross that bridge. But other than that, with the bars on and adjusted up, I mean, I think it's going to be good. The bars are actually in pretty much the right spot. I didn't even loosen them back up. I I only had them somewhat torqued down. They're not completely torqued, but tight enough that I had to, you know, really give it a good push in order to move them. But hey, I tell you, they feel so comfortable. Anyway, okay, well, give me a minute. I'll get this outer back on, and we'll see what it looks like all together. All right, so back on. That looks pretty cool. I'm actually fairly impressed with how this thing looks. And like I said, everything sits really nice. I only, like, you know, partially buttoned this thing up. I didn't go overly tight with these screws. Matter of fact, I just kind of set them in there. You see how this one's kind of sitting cocked? Well, that's because when they make these things, the nutserts that they use in here are subpar. I mean, they are not good at all. I had the same issue with my other bike that I did this on. And, you know, when I go to prep this thing out, when I actually go to paint it, I'm going to go in there. I'm probably going to reinforce some areas with some fiberglass. I'm also going to try to secure those nutserts a little bit better. I'm also going to run the screws in and out a bunch of times so that the threads are really, really good. Anybody that's ever done these before, you guys would know all about this. But to anybody who hasn't done this and you plan on doing it, this is something that you really need to pay careful attention to. Like I said, those nutserts are, you know, they're in there, but they're in a really, really thin fiberglass. And all it takes is you to cross-thread that thing once this thing's all painted and put back together. And when you go to back that screw back out, this nutsert's going to start spinning. And if your bolt is in there and the nutsert starts spinning, you are SOL. You will be either cutting into the fiberglass or cutting the head off the bolt or whatever you're going to do to try to get it back off. But chances are you're going to ruin your paint work. You're just going to have a big mess on your hands. So I'm going to do as much preventive measures as I can with this thing in order to make sure that it is 100% serviceable. If I need to get back in there after I'm done, maybe to, I don't know, adjust the amplifier or do anything, get at the radio, whatever. If I need to get back in there, I want to know that I'm going to be able to get back in there at any one given time. So there'll be some prep done to this thing. There'll be a lot of prep done to this thing before it gets painted. It's in a very, very, even though it looks good, it's in a very rough state. It's probably still by far the best quality that I've seen from any of these fairings that come through. Like I said, I've only done, this is my second one actually installing and you know, painting and installing and doing all this stuff. But I've painted a lot of these for a friend of mine who builds these bikes, and I've seen various you know, quality. This is probably the best quality that I've seen as far as these go, but they're all, you know, they all still need a little bit of work. So unless you know a body guy or you're handy as far as that stuff goes, these things are going to need some a little bit of prep. You need to know what you're getting into before you start in on this. Case in point, I don't know if you can kind of see it in the video, but you know, this waviness here, I can't let that go. That's not going to be something that I'm going to be happy with, especially since I'm painting this black and it's going to show everything. This gel coat that they put on this thing is, I mean, it's good and all, but I wouldn't run this. Obviously, it doesn't match the paint at all, and you know, it looks unfinished. So there'll be a lot of priming and blocking, maybe even a little bit of filler in order to rectify some of these little bit of waves here. Otherwise, this thing's going to look like the ocean when I'm done with it. So yeah, anyway, so time to start breaking this thing back down, take a look at these brackets. So get the brackets off the fairing and see which way I want to attack this. I haven't decided if I'm going to take a plasma cutter to the brackets to slot them, or if I'm just going to, depending on how far up I have to go with them, I might just use like a Dremel or something along that line. We'll see. But yeah, let me get this thing broken down. All right, so I got it all broken down. One of the other things I was going to mention too as well is this fairing comes with bolts or nuts, sorry, that have a nylock type fastener, just for the on and off purpose, you know, because this thing's going to go on and off the bike like a bunch of times before it actually makes it to paint, because you have to do all your mock-up obviously before you get to your final stage. I don't bother using these until the very end, and honestly, I'm probably not going to use the washers that came with it. I'm going to use some fatter washers so that it actually has more of a contact area for the fiberglass. I think that'll help hold it a little bit better. So while I've been mocking it up, I just kind of went in the drawer and grabbed, you know, just some nuts that I had kicking around that don't have a nylock built into them, just so I don't have to worry about, you know, destroying this. Because, I mean, obviously it's a... Nylocks are meant to be, for the most part, a one-time use type piece, you know, because as that thread cuts into that nylon piece, you know, it's the replacement for a lock washer. So, all right, first thing I'm going to do is you can see where I where I drew those holes or drew them lines around where this thing went. And you can see this is obviously got a lot more room than this one does, because this is where the bottom out was, and I actually have I have quite a bit of space there. So I'm gonna kind of measure on this thing real quick and see exactly what I'm dealing with for space wise. It looks like an eighth of an inch. It's actually just shy of a quarter of an inch. I'd say, yeah, I'd say I'm gonna opt more for the quarter-inch side. So I would assume, obviously, left and right, they're both going to be about the same. So I'm going to have to figure a way to do this, and I think I'd like to do it once and one time only, so that I make sure that they're both exactly the same, which, looking at these brackets, they're not 100% correct, which would explain why I had to monkey around with it a little bit to get it to sit right the first time. So I think I'm going to fasten these things, or clamp them together at least, and when I take this off, I'm just going to take a quarter-inch off both pieces at one time, so it's exactly the same, rather than run the risk of you know, having one side be more than the other. And looking at it, I don't know. I think I'm just going to hit it up with a Dremel. If it was more than a quarter of an inch, I'd probably just grab the plasma cutter, get a line going, and then, you know, kind of fix it with a file after I'm done. But the nice part about a Dremel, or even I might just use a deburring bit that I have for an air tool and do it that way. I'll be wearing some shavings, but it'll be a lot cleaner when it's all done. Goal for these too is I'm not going to leave them like this, because there's too much of this bracket that actually shows. The whole side shows, and it is against chrome, so that really makes it look like crap after it's on there. You know, you got this brushed aluminum kind of look. I think I'm going to take these and just pretty much do exactly what I did to the forks with these. So, and the nice part about this is all just bare stock, so it'll shine up a lot easier, a lot quicker. All I'll have to do is just get rid of whatever marks I see here, and then go ahead and buff them out. But I don't even really have to worry about this part, because this part's going to be, you know, mounted to the inside of the fairing, and you're never going to see that anyway. So that'll be cool. All right, well, I'm going to start getting these things together, and looks like I'll be getting dirty. So I'm going to measure out a quarter of an inch and see how that comes out. So get back at you. So I got it all clamped up in the vise here, and everything seems to be lined up so that I should be on par to make a nice even cut throughout the whole, both brackets. So I'm going to take the old hole hogger 5000 here, hook it up to air, and start cutting into this thing and see if I can't chisel it back and get it to look a little bit closer to what it should be. So yeah, let me get suited up and we'll get this done. Get the old eyeglasses on, because you know they say safety last, and see you in a minute. Okay, give you an idea what we're looking at now. So I got these, they're both of equal cut Obviously, this is just the starts. You know, I got to go in here and clean up the edges or whatever, but it should be a good jumping off point, I think. Yeah, the next step is going to be to, I did measure them, I looked at them, and they seem to be, yeah, they're like dead on, so they have the same, about the same drop now. So when they go back on, they should, by rights, they should both bottom out, you know, on that rubber, and they should both fit about as low as they could go without actually getting into this bottom one and dremeling this up, which may or may not be a possibility, depending on how these fit. So next step is going to be to mock these back up on the bike, make sure that they do sit down onto the rubbers okay. If they do, I'm going to go ahead and start mounting them back onto the inner part of the fairing. And then, yeah, we'll get it back on the bike, see what it dropped it. If it dropped it enough where it's within striking distance and I think I can get away with it, I plan on putting... like what I did with my other bike, I plan on putting a couple of pieces of like rubberized, not so much camper tape, but it's like a neoprene kind of like foam tape that will go over the top of the nacelle. It's going to act as like a damper anyways, so that it does kind of, you know, keep anything from rattling around, and it kind of stiffens everything up too. But yeah, I don't want to have to fill a giant gap with that stuff. So I'd like to have this fairing sitting down onto the nacelle as much as possible. Make it look a little bit better too as well. So get these things back on the bike, test fit, make sure that they both bottom out at the same point, and go from there. All right, so this is looking pretty good. Sitting pretty close to where I think I want it. I might have to chisel the brackets up a little bit more to get this fairing to sit down just a little bit further, because I'm still not liking this gap. It's definitely down a lot further than it was, but it is riding really close to the edge of this nacelle on both sides. So I think if I just kind of close this gap up a little bit, it'll make everything sit a little bit nicer. I like the way it sits on the bike height-wise in relation to the handlebars, so I don't want to go too much more. So I'm also going to start closing up this gap underneath here, and I don't really want to have no accessibility to get in there with like a rag or anything to shine it up when I go to wax the bike or anything. So yeah, I think I'm going to break it back down and chisel away at those brackets a little bit more. So catch up with you in a minute. All right, got these brackets knocked down a little bit further so that they'll sit a little bit more onto the mounts, a little further down onto the mounts. Retrospect, I probably should have maybe fired up the plasma cutter to do this, but now it's done now. You can see exactly how much I've taken off from the original marks. I mean, I've gone a good solid, probably ½ inch all the way up. I think that's going to cause it to sit down a lot further and give me that look that I'm looking for. I really would like to have these things sitting as close as I can to the nacelle, sitting right down on it, so I don't have to worry about putting as much of that camper tape in there to cut down on the air that's, you know, coming through there when I'm riding, and also to give it a better look, so it sits down on there and fits around the headlight a little bit better. So all right, I'm going to mount these back up to the fairing and get it back on the bike. So I wasn't kidding when I said this thing would have to go on and come off and go on a million times before I got it right. It was the same way with the other bike, but, you know, I'd much rather, like, you know, trial and error this thing and get it to fit exactly the way I want it, as opposed to go ahead and paint it and then have everything, when I go to put it together, everything just doesn't work. So I'd much rather be a little bit more careful about it. right. Let's see what we got here. All right, let's take a look at this thing here. So it's definitely sitting down further. I mean, I can barely get my finger in there till about there. I don't know, about an inch in. And man, it definitely sits better, but my God, it's still like really, really close. I know this thing isn't like completely buttoned up to where it needs to be, but man, that thing is like still touching. I'm probably gonna have to do some fiberglass work in here. I have a feeling I'm gonna have to grind this and basically make that contour. And then what I'll probably have to do is just kind of come in here and reinforce the sides. It's a wonderful thing about fiberglass. You can take a grinder to it, you can chisel it, you can do whatever you want, as long as you build it back up on the other side. So, I don't know. I don't dare go down any further though. I'm loose right here. It's sitting on the brackets loose, but it's tilted back where it's gonna actually sit. So that's where it needs to be right there. That's not, there's not a whole lot of room for improvement. I mean, I could chisel these down further, but man, oh man, I've already gone down like, got a quarter of an inch, half an inch on each side. I mean, before these things were like, you know, they stopped right about here. Now we're below there. So I'm going to lop this off. And I mean, once I sand and polish and that's all done, you won't even see that. But yeah, that's definitely better. It's better. I think I can deal with that. Again, the other thing too is I really don't want this to sit, you know, a whole lot lower than that. Man, I can't even get my hand in there anymore. So it's not like I gotta get in there, but it would be nice to be able to at least stuff a rag in there to clean. That's the OCD side of me there talking. But I don't think I want to go down any further though. You know, you gotta picture it with the windshield on. You know, that's gonna bring it up to about there. I got a nice Harley shield that's smoked and it's laid back and it curls. So as opposed to the ones that came with it, it's just a flat piece of like tinted plexi basically that comes with it. It comes with two shields. It comes with just a straight clear shield, and then it comes with a tinted one that's like like a brown tint. It's kind of funky. I had it on the other bike. It looked all right, but this one's going to get an actual Harley shield that I'm just going to kind of modify to fit into this fairing that goes on like a Street Glide. So I don't know. I think this is good. I'm not going to go any further than that. I'll just have to do a little bit of extra work in here, which that's doable. So, all right, I think I'm done with fitment. So next step is to, again, break this all down and start taking like cables out and everything. My stuff should all be showing up here pretty soon. I got, like I said, I got the brake lines, I got the cables, clutch and the throttle cables as well. So, all right, I'm gonna break this thing down and start taking a look at some of this other stuff. So. All right, so I don't know if you noticed when I was taking that off. Before I took it off, I actually marked both sides to verify exactly where the cuts were going to be. And this should tell you everything you need to know. So I cut both these brackets up exactly the same size. By rights, they should be dead on, right? Not really. Not really. And the nacelle's sitting in one spot. So, I mean, that should give you an idea. One side's going to have to get chopped up a hair more than the other. So I'm going to just cut these because, you know, they're obviously left to right brackets. It's not like you can put the right on the left and the left on the right because of this cut-in right here. So when I chop them, they're going to look 100% even. You'll never be able to see it from one side to the other, but that should give you an idea that these are not, you know, they're not 100% correct. The other thing that I did too, as well, before I broke it down, was I made a note where, I don't know if you can see it in the video or not, but I made a note where the actual spot was, where the point on the nacelle, because it has that little style line that's into the chrome, is kind of sticking out. So that's right where it's touching. That's right where it's been rubbing the whole time as I've been fitting this thing on and off, on and off, on and off. Not a big deal. I mean, once I put that nacelle back, once I put the fairing back on, it's okay, it's fine, but what it's going to end up doing if I don't do something with that is it's going to work its way right through the fiberglass. It's going to, over time, it's going to rub away the paint, and it'll start rubbing into the fiberglass. It'll probably destroy the chrome on the nacelle. Not that it really matters, because I don't ever plan on doing anything different with it other than that, but say someone down the road decided they wanted to, 86 this whole thing. I know there's a lot of people that don't really care for this kind of thing. They like to keep a bike, OG, and make it look like it came from the factory. A lot of people really love those full-on big chrome ones too, because they're kind of like steampunkish looking. They might want to take it back off, and when they get to it, they're going to see big old spots rubbed through. I know that shouldn't matter to me because I don't plan on taking it off, but I have like I said, I have an issue, and down the road, someone else might just thank me for doing that. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that in. Another thing I was noticing too, like I told you before, I don't know if you can see it in the video, but see how that fiberglass is dimpled down right there? That's actually a small crack. There's a split in the fiberglass. And that's because when they started installing these nutserts, when they made this thing, it's thin. It's thin, so it's going to be more susceptible to cracking. So again, another reason right there why I want to go ahead and reinforce around this thing so that it can't spin, it can't move. It's in there definitely crooked. I mean, that's why the screws didn't want to go in right. So as far as rectifying the crack and everything, probably not. However, what I might do is do like a pair of duckbill vice grips and kind of hold that tight, and then go ahead and put that stuff in there. So it's like a two-part epoxy. It's a SEM product. So we'll see when I get to that point, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So everything is broken down. It's all apart. In the next video, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start tearing the cables off the bike, tearing off the brakes and everything. I'm not a big fan of doing anything before I actually have parts in hand. I like to compare, because if I go tearing all the brake lines off this thing and for some reason it's not right, well, then now I got an open brake system just sitting there, and air, moisture, whatever getting into everything. I'm just a fan of not doing anything until I have stuff here. So as soon as I get those parts in, I'm gonna start tearing this thing apart, and you guys will be right there and along for the ride. So if you guys are enjoying these videos, I actually thoroughly enjoy making them, and I plan on doing some other stuff in the near future. I don't know if I'm going to pick up some other bikes and maybe redo some stuff, possibly restoration or whatever on an older bike. I haven't decided yet, but if you like this stuff, give it a thumbs up, like it, and do me a favor and subscribe, because it's fun making them, and I'd like to continue doing it if there's actually a want or a need for it. So until next time, I'll see you guys. Have a good one.